Matrix Resurrections is directed by Lana Wachowski and stars Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne returning as Neo and Trinity, and this takes place after Matrix 3, and Neo still has memories of the Matrix and he uses that to turn it into a video game, while Trinity remembers nothing. And then eventually Neo finds himself back in the Matrix. The first Matrix movie is one of my favourite movies of all time, so of course I'm going to be kind of excited for this movie, and the reason I say kind of is because Matrix 2 is good. There's some really good scenes in that movie, but it still has its problems, but it's still overall good. Matrix 3 is one of the worst sequels of all time. So when they announced this movie, I was actually kind of excited. But then the trailer came and I had a bit mixed feelings. One of the obvious reasons is they changed the actor for Morpheus. It is now played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, not Lawrence Fishburne, for some weird reason. And unfortunately, Matrix Resurrections is even worse than I thought it was. This did nothing but annoy me. It legit reminded me of a Star Wars sequel. So Morpheus, let's talk about him. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II plays him. He could have been a completely just new character. He didn't have to be Morpheus. That's what annoys me. He could have just been like Morpheus' son or sidekick, whoever, a completely new character, not the Morpheus himself. And why didn't they just bring back Lawrence Fishburne? They had no good reason not to bring him back. Like, what makes it even worse is that you see clips, legit clips from the other Matrix movies. So obviously you see the Lawrence Fishburne, the real Morpheus. So that legit just makes me even more annoyed. The fact they legit show him in those bits, and the whole movie is constantly reminding you how great this movie was, the first Matrix movie. And Morpheus does literally nothing in this movie. He is almost a side character. Like, in the whole third act especially, it's like Morpheus is not even there. Morpheus is probably the most important character in all of Matrix. So for him to just be in the background is, again, really annoying. This isn't a spoiler, but they only show it in the second trailer, so it's not technically a spoiler. It definitely isn't a spoiler, but in case you don't want to know, just skip a couple of minutes in of the video. But there's not really much point because it's not a spoiler anyway. So pretty much, Agent Smith is in the movie, aka Hugo Weaving's character in the Matrix movies. But of course, unfortunately, it's not Hugo Weaving. It's some random guy. But they do mention it is Agent Smith himself. And this guy who plays him gives a really cringe-worthy performance as him. I actually feel bad about the actor. Like, no disrespect to him at all, but he's going to be living in Hugo Weaving's shadow. But the thing that annoys me the most, not only it's not Hugo Weaving, they got his character completely wrong, and not only just because of the actor change, but he acts really childish and goofy. The way he talked just was nothing like Agent Smith. It's like they completely forgot the whole character of him. Like, it's not only because of his acting, it's because of the awful dialogue he says. And he is such a useless character. He's not even a threat anymore. In the old Matrix movies, he was always there. He was always a threat. But in this movie, he's just some big joke. Even the action sequences are done quite poor. Really poor. Like, at least Matrix 3 has decent action scenes in that movie. This movie doesn't even deliver that. Literally, the entire movie is all exposition. There's way more exposition than action. Literally every single line of the dialogue is exposition. Like, you compare how the Matrix 1 does exposition, it is literally perfect. It's interesting, it's new, but this movie, it's stuff we already know and don't care about because we'd rather see it in the first movie that is one of the greatest movies of all time. And I really hate to say this, but blame the movie because of how awful it is, but Keanu Reeves is not good. And it really is sad to say this because he's one of my favourite actors of all time, but he is not good as Neo. The whole movie, he just looks tired. Something this movie does as well, it is almost exactly the same as the first Matrix movie. Especially the first half an hour, you can clearly tell, but the whole movie is pretty much exactly the same as the first. Now, that could be an interesting idea, because that is the greatest movie of all time, so if you're going to do it, at least add some new stuff. Of course, they did add new stuff, but it was all done so badly. The whole execution in this movie is absolutely dreadful. And the fact it is almost exactly the same as the first movie, you have no choice but to compare them, but I'm not going to do that because that is so stupid. It all just looks like more of a TV show of The Matrix. The CGI is dreadful sometimes in this movie, and so much pointless CGI. For example, Morpheus is sometimes this CGI silver stuff you might see in the trailer. That is legit so pointless. Like, why couldn't they just make Morpheus look normal? There's also sometimes in the movie where it's like slow motion but really wacky. It's a bit hard to explain, but when you watch the movie, you'll know what I mean. It looks proper wacky and awful. It legit looks like your TV or the cinema screen is legit lagging and freezing and crashing on everything. So Trinity, let's talk about Trinity. I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm already legit roasting the movie how bad it is anyway. But Trinity is barely in the movie. So if you expect a lot of Trinity, you are already going to be even more disappointed because she is barely in the movie. She's in a few scenes at the beginning where she's in the cafe and she meets Neo again, and then she's pretty much only in the third act. And that's another thing that annoys me, because a problem I have with the Matrix sequels, I feel like they don't do anything with Trinity's character. So, of course, this sequel that came out such a long time, why couldn't they have done something with Trinity in this? And of course they tried to, but she's barely in the movie. This is also a sequel that has no conflict at all. There's legit no threat anywhere. In the first Matrix movie, you get Agent Smith after the gang. You also get Cypher, who betrays the gang. There's always a constant threat, but in this movie, it's just nothing but boring exposition. This is a sequel that just could have been good. I really wanted to love this movie. Matrix is one of my favourite movies of all time. Trust me, if there's anyone who wants to love this movie, it is me. But am I ever going to watch this again? No, I'd rather watch Matrix 3 again, and I hate that piece of shit. At least that movie has Lawrence Fishburne, Hugo Weaving, decent action scenes. That movie was literally one of the worst sequels I've ever seen until I saw this movie. Also, they use the music from the original movies legit in the opening title. That's it, and it just goes and never comes back. Look, I wanted this movie to be good. I really, really wanted to love this movie. Matrix is one of my favourite movies of all time. I will keep repeating that because that is how much I love Matrix. But if there's anyone who wants to love this movie, it really is me. But at the same time, that is the reason why this movie did nothing but annoy me. I'm going to give Matrix Resurrections a D. I'm really sorry to disappoint you for people who was expecting this movie to be good, but believe me, it's not. I could have given it an F, to be honest. I would happily give this an F. It really is that awful. It's just a movie that has no payoff. There's no result apart from how awful it is. Anyway, that's it. See ya.